The June 14, 2023 Williamsburg Planning Commission meeting to order. Heather, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hamilton?
Here.
Mr. Kale? Mr. Tarley?
Here.
Mr. Boswell?
Here.
Mr. Granger?
Here.
Mr. Sokolowski?
Here.
Ms. Liebel?
Here.
Thank you. Our first agenda item is the approval of the minutes from our May 17 meeting. There were a couple of edits that were made since those were posted on this past Friday. Does anyone have further edits to be made to the ones that are posted as we sit here? None? Can I have a motion to approve the May 17, 2023 minutes as submitted?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Abstain.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Mr. Sokolowski?
Abstain.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
Thank you. That brings us to our open forum, which is an opportunity for anyone to address the commission on matters that are not specifically on today's agenda. This is the chance. Second chance, going once, going twice. Not seeing anyone, I'm going to close that open forum. We don't have any consent agenda items today, and that brings us to our public hearings. We begin with PCR 22-023, and Ms. Griffin, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Chairman Boswell and members of the Planning Commission. Today we have two public hearings, and I'll start with the first one, and it's PCR 22-023. This is an application from 252 Patriot Lane, LLC, to rezone property located at 252 Patriot Lane. This is parcel number 3908.055.668. And the applicant is requesting to rezone the property from B2, our corridor business district, to the multifamily district, which is our RM2. The property is approximately 32,800 square feet and is located also in the CP, our corridor protection district, and the applicant is also asking to have this property removed from the corridor protection district. The subject property is approximately 32,800 square feet. It is located to the rear of Clarion Hotel, which is at 3032 Richmond Road. And the property was once utilized as a tennis courts for the then Holiday Inn Patriot. This property was sold to A&H Hospitality, and the property in question was subdivided and has remained vacant ever since. Specifically, the property owner is requesting the RM2 zoning district, and he wants to build 9 townhouses. These townhouses would have forward-facing garages, and there would be 2 parking spaces per townhouse and 2 guest parking spaces along the right-of-way area. The applicant is also requesting sidewalks. There will be sidewalks in the property, and then there's a community trash collection area to the rear. Anytime we're looking at a rezoning, we want to make sure that we are in conformance with the surrounding properties. And here, this is a zoning map, and it just shows you that surrounding the property, RM2 is B2 and also RS2. The RS2 is a Piney Creek subdivision, and the RM2 is Westgate at Williamsburg, the Claiborne, and also the Patriot condominiums. All of these are multifamily communities. We also want to make sure that the use is compatible, or the rezoning is compatible with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan future land use map designates this property as corridor commercial. In fact, the 2021 comprehensive plan designation does not allow for standalone residential uses except in conjunction with the commercial component. And the proposed development is strictly residential and therefore is not in keeping with the current corridor land use designation. However, the location of the property behind the Clarion Hotel, now fronting on Patriot Lane, is approximately 680 feet from Richmond Road. It does not lend itself to a commercial use, and so staff concludes that the best use of the property is to either continue it as open space or to allow it to be used as residential development, similar to the surrounding properties. So I mentioned the three residential communities surrounding 252 Patriots Lane. Again, there are Patriot condominiums, Westgate at Williamsburg and Claiborne at Williamsburg. As you'll see here, this is the comp plan designation. The burgundy area is corridor commercial. The burnt orange is high-density multifamily, and then the medium-density multifamily is, you can see that off of Waltz Farm Drive. The vacant property off of Waltz Farm Drive is specifically noted in the comprehensive plan. It says that this property is over 2 acres and it nets about 1 acre, and therefore the comp plan calls for this to be medium density family designation, which is 8 units per acre. And then the high density multifamily is 14 units per acre. Because staff feels the best use of this property would be to have it as residential in keeping with the surrounding properties, we are suggesting that instead of building 9 townhouses, that the property owner would build 7, and this is because of the designation in the comp plan. Again, the property off of Waltz Farm Drive is 2 acres. The comp plan talks about it netting 1 acre, and that plan also calls for 8 units per acre. This particular property is 32,800 square feet, which is just under 43,560, which is 1 acre, and so therefore, instead of 8 or 9 townhomes, we're suggesting there be 7. The applicant is also requesting for this particular property to be taken out of the Corridor Protection District. This district is designated to protect the character of the Colonial Williamsburg Historic District and the Architectural Historical District by ensuring that major corridors are developed and maintained in a harmonious and compatible manner. This is under the purview of the Architectural Review Board. Because the property no longer fronts on Richmond Road, it's not a part of the hotel, but fronts on Patriot Lane and is over 600 feet from Richmond Road. The ARB did hear this case in April 11th of this year and recommended approval of the request to be removed from the CP. Now again, they don't have the power to make this happen. Of course, the City Council does, but we did want the applicant to at least hear from the ARB and the ARB to give their opinion. So staff recommends the property be rezoned from B2 to RM2 to be compatible with property in the immediate area. Staff also recommends the applicant construct 7 townhouses instead of 9, and staff also recommends the property be removed from the CP district. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And the applicant and his representative is here today.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Very nice presentation, as always. Questions for Ms. Griffin?
Yeah, I want to make sure that I understand the reduction from 9 to 7 or possibly 8. What do they qualify for the density, the number of units per density, without anything special?
Without anything special, he would not be able to build townhouses at this location.
Okay.
So he's asking for RM2. And the RM2 allows for 14 dwelling units per acre.
And they're not an acre?
No, it's 32,800 square feet, and an acre is 43,560 square feet. So they are 0.753 acres. 32,800.
All right, so I'm trying to hone in on the number of units that are really allowed as opposed to in accordance with the density.
Okay.
So I'm going to noodle on that a little bit more, I expect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So may I ask a question,
Yes.
Ms. Griffith? If they're 0.753 acres, would the allowable density be a simple proportion, 0.753 times 14, which I believe is the allowable for RM2? Is that correct?
And that's what, let me look at this. I'm looking at my staff report. Let me make sure I'm giving you the right numbers,
Okay.
Ms. Liebel.
We're thinking the same thing.
Yeah, it's a math question.
Arithmetic.
I want to make sure I'm giving you the right as 14 dwelling units per acre. That is what the comp plan designation is if they go to high density. The land use designation for this property is medium density multifamily, 8 units per acre. That is the units off of Claiborne. And they are, I'm going to see what the zoning is there. So the RM2 here, the density is 8 units per acre.
So that makes it 6.
But I've got the Muni code up on my phone. And it says the lot area and density requirements in multifamily dwelling district RM2 are as follows. And then it describes 14 units
14 units per acre.
per acre, per net acre. So is the .753 gross acreage, and we'd have to net it for the street?
Yes, the .753 is gross acreage. The RM2, and I'm looking at the comp plan designation and the zoning ordinance designation. I'm trying to make sure I'm giving you the right information. So a high-density multifamily residential is 14 dwelling units per acre. RM2 is 14 per acre. The medium is 8 units per acre. So it is 14 dwelling units per acre.
But this .753 is gross, so we don't know what the net acreage is for this parcel?
I did not make that calculation, and I
okay.
can't do it in my head. I'm sorry.
And it's possible, or the presentation will explain some of this.
Yes,
I don't know.
they may, I don't have that part of my presentation, but the applicant may have that in their presentation.
Other questions from Ms. Griffin besides the high-level math?
The math, I'm
Well,
sorry.
I'm not going to require high-level math, but it's on the same point, because I note in your report, you wrote that the comp plan is clear that parcels with a net of 1 acre should have density of no more than 8 units per acre.
Yes, sir.
That's where you got the less than 7, the less than
Exactly,
8.
because this particular property is not an
Less
acre.
than an acre.
Yes.
Say it's clear, it's not part of the ordinance, though.
It is actually a part of the comp plan. When it speaks to Waltz Farm, which is just 1 street over, it speaks to that property specifically, and that's more than 2 acres, but it says it only nets an acre, and it's recommended 8 units per acre.
That doesn't specifically apply to this,
It does not specifically,
the adjacent, so we're just extrapolating.
Rezone them to RM2, it will be the density in RM2. There is no proffer associated with this rezoning, so the staff recommendation does not carry the weight of law as it would if there was a proffer.
I've got a question about parking.
yes,
I think what I heard was 2 parking spaces per unit plus 2 guest spaces in total.
that's in total. So each unit has a garage, and then each unit has a driveway, and that makes up the 2 spaces for each townhouse. And then there are 2 parking spaces for guests for the total development.
Is that within the code requirements for parking for such a development?
Yes, they meet the requirements for parking for this development.
Thank you.
Ms. Griffin, when you and I were looking at this, and I'm not sure if there have been changes over the last month, but you may recall we were looking at the driveways, and it seemed to us that the standard length automobile might, in parking in driveway, might interfere with the sidewalks and that sort of thing. Were you able to look at that?
Yes, I had a conversation with Mr. Hopke, and it will not. The driveways are 1 per vehicle, and it is not encroaching to the sidewalk.
It's hard for us to tell. Remember, yeah. Other questions for Ms. Griffin before the applicant comes up? Okay, I'll go ahead and open the public forum, and Mr. Getty, I believe you're representing the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'm Vernon Getty of 1177 Jamestown Road, here representing the applicant. Mr. Phil Victor, the owner of 252 Patriot Lane. Also here, Greg Warren with Land Tech Resources and John Hopke, the architect on the project. I'll be very brief. I mean, we think this is a very good use of this sort of orphan piece of property. Brief history, Phil Richardson built the Holiday Inn Patriot years ago, and when he sold it, as Tevye described, this piece was subdivided off. It's 680 feet from Richmond Road. It's not a suitable commercial location, nor is it necessary to be in the corridor protection district. So we think the use is good. We thought the density was appropriate given the zoning being sought, and certainly consistent with the surrounding development around it, which is all either commercial or multifamily residential. So we'd love to get the 9 units an acre. If there's a thought it needs to be reduced, we would ask that it not be reduced below 8, which would allow them to do 2 4-unit buildings. Same, save some architectural fees, while still opening up the site a bit. But the other thing I'd mention is Mr. Victor held a neighborhood meeting Monday night, invited all the immediate neighbors, and one person came and left very happy with the project. So I can report that to you. We'd be glad to answer any questions you have, but we would ask you forward this on to council with a recommendation of approval.
Questions for Mr. Getty? You heard some of the questions from Mr. Granger, Ms. Liebel, and Mr. Tarley on the proportion and the net acreage that we have here. What can you speak to that? Can you give us more information?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I don't think there's any undevelopable property on this site, so I'm not sure of the calculation of net acreage, but 14 units an acre times the size of the parcel, I think it would get you to 10 units an acre.
Well, Ms. Liebel's question, I think, was about do you net out the street
Yeah,
from...
so if there is some netting out, I would think either 8 or 9 would certainly be appropriate.
All right. Other questions for Mr. Getty?
So I'm on the site plan review committee, and I could be mistaken because I've seen a lot of site plans. But at one point, I have a recollection that there was some discussion about making the driveway wide enough for 2 cars, because we know that usually, well, in many cases, the garage is not really a parking space.
Right.
It's a collection space. And so I'm a little concerned about what might actually be 1 parking space, and if there was the ability to make the driveways wide enough so you could put 2 cars in front.
Yeah, I will punt that to.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
That's our intention to widen.
Okay.
Yeah.
With respect to the number of units, if the recommendation or the ultimate approval is of 7 units, does that change the equation as to whether to go forward with the project?
I would have to leave that with Mr. Victor.
So, it's still a project. Cover all our bases and figure out what options we have. I'm just trying to make certain we have actually would really 9 to 8, 4 and 4 would open things up. It would work with
I think that's a number that I think would work for everybody.
Else, Mr. Tarley?
Nothing.
No.
Not for the... Okay, thank you, Mr. Getty.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak? Yes, please. If It's, state your name and your address so the clerk can get it in the
Hi,
minutes
my
for
name
us.
is Tiffany Patty. I live at 1301 Westgate Circle. My community is one of the surrounding communities, and we're all condominiums. And I believe these are simple fee, so there will be a condominium or an HOA. And I'm concerned with the long-term effects of townhomes without an HOA, without a condominium, to make sure that the common areas and parking things are kept to where they should be, and that the property is kept up. So I haven't heard or seen, and I wasn't aware of the meeting that they had. I didn't get an invite, so I'm here today to find out what is the plan for that going forward. Because long-term townhomes that don't have a condominium are left to do whatever they'd like. And we all live under a condominium, Westgate, Patriot, and Claiborne. So I was curious if that was going to be a requirement if the zoning is changed to something where there's no accountability for what it's going to look like going forward.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me just ask the city attorney real quickly, because you mentioned a requirement, so I want to just address that. There is not a requirement that a development like this have a homeowner association. There's not a requirement. Okay, so it's optional based on their choice, and Mr. Getty, I believe, can respond to that.
I can answer that quickly. There will be a mandatory association that would maintain pieces of common area in the parking.
Okay, thank you. So there's the answer, homeowner association. It's not condos, but a homeowner association like a traditional subdivision would have. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, sir, please come up.
My name is Miko Popovic, and I live right there inside the Patriot Lane. So I do have just a question. I do admire any, anything that coming as a new prospect. But for a while, we do have the problem with the sewage and underground the water. And we have that senior property that's right across the road, across the new building. So I'm quite sure that the city is aware of drainage issues and all the underground water issues that we're always dealing with. So I'm just wondering, adding the new structure, new building, how that's going to affect, because obviously that's going to be even more drainage or more. I understand they're going to come with the new, but what's in the ground now making the issues for all those properties around? Because like I said, almost every rain, 4 days of rain, we do have all that underground water coming through. So
Okay,
that's something that
thank you.
you're welcome.
Let me just ask Ms. Griffin, have our engineers looked at that aspect?
Well, the engineers did review the limited site plan. They did review the request. There were no comments made about the particular issue that the gentleman just addressed. So that was not, that it did go to the city engineers, also reviewed by the police department, planning and fire, and that wasn't an issue that came out of the discussion.
Okay, but it seems like a significant issue. Sir? I understand. Okay. Thank you for that. Would anyone else like to address Commission? See a sidebar going on over there, so no, I'm just asking. I just want to make sure I give you the chance to. Okay. I'm known for moving meetings along, and so yes, sir. Another comment? No. Just privately sold, my understanding, right? Yes. Yep. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask the commissioners. We have a lot of moving parts here with some of the numbers.
I guess numbers wise, I was looking at it and it looks like if the net acreage on the property is above a 0.57 threshold, then that would be able to hold the 8 units that's being requested. So I think in terms of net versus gross, based off of the 14 in RM2, then I think 0.57 acres would be the appropriate number there. So I don't know what the net acreage is, but if there were a way to calculate it, that would be it, to hold 8 in the ordinance.
Okay, thank you for that. Your numbers agree?
I'm not disagreeing. I think
Okay.
that 8 sounds like a good number.
Okay.
I've got no additional comments on.
Well, you're the engineer that could handle all of our all this math and all these decimal points.
I'll support the young guy's math over there. How about that?
Charlie?
Yeah, couple questions I want to ask City Attorney with respect to the Property Owners Association. The applicant has indicated that they intend to have a Property Owners Association. I would assume that their governing documents would be reviewed by City Attorney?
Not typically, unless the zoning ordinance, unless there was some part of this rezoning that required that review, and there isn't.
Okay, so, and I guess that goes to the other point which was brought up, was the stormwater, was concern about stormwater drainage, and I assume during the site plan process that issue will be investigated.
That's correct, sir.
At this point, we don't believe that there would be any BMP or any other type of structure to be.
That's correct. If it was, and that would have been pointed out by the city engineer when he provided his comments.
Is it fair to say, Shelton, that if there was a BMP required to be constructed, that might generate some sort of input from the city on maintenance?
Right, we would have a maintenance agreement if the city engineer felt a BMP was necessary. I think if he thought it was necessary, we would already know the answer to that.
Mr. Granger?
So I feel like 8 is a reasonable number, subject to city attorney saying that it's not in violation of anything, and that it works with what we're supposed to do. They've indicated that they want to have a driveway that's wide enough for 2 vehicles in front, and they're planning on doing that. They're planning on having an association of some sort, and so it seems reasonable that we could expect that to be part of a proffer of the rezoning, so that it's tied to it as opposed to, yeah, we're planning to do it. So that might give everybody a little more comfort and assurances that it's being taken care of instead of just planned.
So, Ms. Shelton, there are no proffers with this.
There are no proffers with this rezoning, and so if you recommend approval and city council approves this rezoning, they're entitled to 14 units per acre. Whatever that net acreage is, it may be 8, it may be 9, because we don't know the answer to that today. If you are interested in having 8 units and only 8 units, then without the proffer, there's no way to enforce that. And you cannot require a proffer, so.
So not being able to require a proffer is one thing, but if they volunteer to proffer,
That's correct.
then that seems reasonable to do.
But since that has not been forthcoming, our vote today is based on what we have in front of us, right? So do we feel comfortable voting today, or do we want to table this for further investigation and discussion around these issues that we have? What do you feel comfortable with? Because we don't want to rush it if there's still questions.
I would agree that we don't want to rush it. I don't know whether them standing at the podium saying, yes, we're going to do this, is a formal proffer, or what I see them having a discussion.
Yeah, I would say it's not a formal proffer, but
Right.
Charlie, your thoughts on voting versus tabling?
If the concern is that we would not be recommending approval of what we intend, then I would say we should probably table it.
I'm with that.
Okay, yeah, because I think our consensus was that we're comfortable with 8, provided that's, with, it doesn't violate the comp plan. But if voting just to approve as submitted would not, that would not be enforceable.
Right.
So that's our concern at that point, that the applicant has agreed that 8 is workable, but it's not formally enforceable based on what we have today. So they could amend with that?
Yes.
Would that work?
If they are interested in doing that, they
If
can
they're
submit
interested in
that.
doing that, okay. So that will give them, we could let them do that and then come back
Yes.
with their decision, and then we could vote on it at that point. Okay. So is there a motion to table PCR 22-023?
So moved.
Oh, yeah. Seconded.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Charlie?
Aye.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Mr. Sokolowski?
Aye.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
Okay, so PCR 22-023 is tabled. Mr. Getty, do you have enough information from this discussion to know how to proceed?
Making on the fly, so we understand the 3 things a proffer would address is the 8 units, the width of the driveway, and the fact there would be an owners association. Applicant is willing to proffer all 3 of those things.
So, Ms. Shelton, that's a verbal proffer
Well,
on the
unfortunately,
fly?
proffers have to be in writing, and so
Have to be in
Mr.
writing,
Getty
yeah,
can
yeah,
submit
yeah.
that.
Can be done between now and the council meeting.
Well, they've tabled it at this point, so
Yeah, we were hoping they could untable it.
Well, Ms. Shelton, it's your advice on that.
well, the public hearing has been held, and so it would be fairly quick next month.
Okay.
And I guess I would also say that wouldn't put us in any different position than we were 5 minutes ago. A promise from the podium.
Right. Okay. That gets us to PCR 23-014.
This is an application request from Williamsburg, James City County Public Schools for a special use permit at 301 Scotland Street. They would like to install an outdoor walk-in freezer in the rear of Matthew Whaley Elementary School. And here is an area of the school here, and the freezer would be facing Lafayette Street. In looking at special use permits, there are 6 criteria that the Planning Commission has to review in order to provide a recommendation to the City Council. The first is the use in harmony with the adopted comprehensive plan? Number 2, is it in harmony with the intent and purpose of the zoning district in which the use is proposed to be located? And number 3, is the use in harmony with the character of adjacent properties and the surrounding neighborhoods? First, we look at the comprehensive plan. The comp plan calls this land as public and semi-public. Uses are generally institutional buildings and lands, and these do include schools and municipal centers. Therefore, staff does agree that this is within and compatible with the comprehensive plan designation. Second is the zoning district. The zoning district here is single-family dwelling district. This is the RS3, and the intent of this district is to allow, with a special use permit, public or private elementary, middle, and high schools, and so therefore this special use permit would move this forward in order to be able to have the facility in the rear of the property. And the third is really to look at character. Will this proposed facility cause damage to the character of the property? And staff does not feel that it would. In the back, there is a berm already there, and they will also have screenings through trees so that you would not be able to see, once grown, you would not be able to see the freezer from the rear. The other approval criteria is, does this particular property have adequate services for streets, drainage facilities, fire protection, public water, and sewer? And then, will the proposed use result in the destruction or loss or damage of any feature? This includes ecological, scenic, and historic importance. And then, is this particular use in harmony with the character of adjacent properties and surrounding neighborhoods? As we all know, this school has been here for decades, and so the property, we believe, is adequately serviced by public facilities. The property is located in the AP1 district. The ARB reviewed and approved the design and siting of the walk-in freezer. This was ARB number 23-050, and it was approved at their April 11th meeting with a unanimous vote of 7-0. They did include landscape screening. And then last, the Site Plan Review Committee met on May the 17th of 2023 to review the site plan design. They did recommend it move forward for review by the entire Planning Commission. Staff therefore believes that this particular application, PCR 23-014, does meet the criteria set forth in section 21-42, and we recommend approval of the special use permit. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Questions?
Yeah, I guess I had one major question, or just, it is pretty straightforward, but just what is the main purpose of this freezer?
Yes. So a new walk-in outdoor freezer is proposed at Matthew Whaley School to provide the necessary additional cold storage space to meet meal preparation demand at the school.
Got it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. We have an opportunity then. I'll open the public forum for anyone that would like to comment on this particular application. Oh, awesome. Okay, good. Yeah, we don't seem to have any questions, I think. There'll be maybe some additional storage for ice cream, and that's a good thing. So I'll close the public forum and ask, is there any discussion? Are we ready for a motion to approve PCR 23-014?
I so move.
Second.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Aye.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Mr. Sokolowski?
Aye.
Ms. Siebel?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That gets us to site plans, of which there are none, unfinished business, which there is none, new business, which there is none. Mr. Tarley, do you have a?
No report.
Okay, and I think everyone else is kind of in between meetings. We have, the next item says, public hearing scheduled for July 19, 2023, none. Now, I think we may have just messed ourselves up on that, because I think Mr. Getty's client may be back in a month. Is that a?
That is what you just did, yes.
That's what we just did, yeah. So, well, that's get that. That's the big money. So, so I think we may have that come back, but at least we're already familiar with it, and it should not be a long meeting. Anything else that we need to discuss today? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you all.